Hello and welcome to the Lackawanna Historical Society. This is the final program for the 2022 Anthracite Mining Heritage Month. Anthracite Mining Heritage Month, as I'm sure many of you know, is an annual observance that focuses on the history and culture of the anthracite region of northeastern Pennsylvania. It is sponsored by many local organizations, including the Anthracite Heritage Museum, the Anthracite Foundation, the Anthracite Chapter of the Society of Mining Engineers, the National Museum of Industrial History, the Knox Mine Disaster Memorial Committee, the No. 9 Mine and Museum, the Breaker Preservation Society, Susquehanna Brewing Company, King's College, WVIA Public Broadcasting, and historical societies of Plymouth, Nanticoke, Luzerne County, and of course Lackawanna. This month-long celebration of all things anthracite is the brainchild of anthracite labor historian Bob Walensky. Bob sends his regards as he could not be with us today, but is watching on live stream from his home in Wisconsin. He did want you to know that he is working on a book that will be released probably in the near future that hits some of the things that relate to the man that we're learning about today and his activities in 1936. But we're going to deal with them a little earlier today. In a recent email, Bob shared his excitement about today's program with me and stressed how important the story of Father John Curran is. In a promotion on WVIA for today's program, Erica Funke stated that Father Curran was a man of great spiritual leadership and also a champion of labor. His role in the Anthracite Strike of 1902 was vital to the success of the United Mine Workers of America. Father Curran, who worked in the mines as a boy and was a close friend of UMW President John Mitchell, supported the striking workers by writing letters to industrial leaders and political figures and promoting their cause through interviews in the press. His efforts gained him the attention of President Theodore Roosevelt, who would eventually seek Father Curran's advice on how to end the strike. Curran's involvement would lead Roosevelt to establish a neutral commission to hear both sides of the argument and determine a settlement, eventually bringing the end of the strike, and marking the first time that the federal government intervened in a labor dispute and bringing attention to the truly deplorable working conditions that our ancestors endured. Today we will have a chance to get to know Father Curran a little bit better as we watch an act from the play For the Least of Them, starring Scott Rave and directed by Art Walsh. I'd like to introduce our playwright first so he can tell you a little bit about his inspiration and what led him to writing this play. K.K. Gordon is a proud Scrantonian who has seen 30 of his plays staged here in northeastern Pennsylvania and 15 in New York City. He received 8 NEPA Theater Alliance Awards, including Best Drama. A poet, playwright, and actor, he has shared his craft as an instructor for the Northeast Intermediate Unit 19, Art Save, the Center for Independent Living, and the Boys and Girls Club. He's a longtime member of Diva Theater's Board of Directors. And KK, if you could come in now, share your inspiration, and introduce the play.
Goodness, you know everything about me already. Art Walsh, myself, and Dr. Barry Minora founded the Old Brick Theater. Sarah is good with dates. I'm just big and pretty. But like not quite 20 years ago. And it's gone through a lot of changes. And for 7 years, we were Scranton Public Theater. And Scranton Public Theater used to bring in special guests for Law Day for the Scranton Bar. And back then, I was the guy who turned on the lights and sound and stuff like that. And so we went to the courthouse with a gentleman named Gary Anderson, who is the international president of the Clarence Darrow Society. And so, yeah, I worked the lights for a pretty famous actor. He's from Idaho. And he was in for days and had nobody to keep him company, so we went bowling a lot of times. And I was like, hey, in that one-man play where you played Clarence Darrow and everybody else, that's incredible. But when you talk about the Breaker Boy, it like broke my heart. And he said he would like to do a play about Curran. and he just needed somebody to write it. And at the time, it was, you know, a punk rock kid. Well, I mean, yesterday I was a punk rock kid, so. At the time, people weren't taking me very serious as a playwright, but I was like, you know, as a throw a 15-pound ball down there, I was like, Gary, I'll do that. And it was like, are you a historian? I was like, no. And they're like, are you a labor scholar? And I laughed. And I'm like, no, but I get people. And it's taken me a long time to get this to you guys. Something happened last week in rehearsal when Sarah, who you'll talk to in a little bit, said, we have breaker boy boots. Right here. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a size 13 work boot. This is a baby shoe. People who fit into this worked in mines. This is what I meant when I used the words for the least of them to describe Father Curran. I'm sorry, I'm a little choked up. He's a hero to me. And at the time, on day one, I came to the Historical Society, and I've known Mary Ann since I was a teenager, and her and Sarah have been incredible from day one. And it was hard to find a lot about the man inside that Father Curran was. So I used my hero priest growing up, Father William Pickard. So in this piece of creative nonfiction, if I didn't get it all right, I gave it, you know, a college try. Thank you so much. It is my great honor to be here. I truly appreciate it.
Hail Mary, full of grace, our Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary. Forgive me, Mother. I have no mind for my prayers tonight. Forgive me. Why me? Why ask me? Hey now, John, Time to be getting your work boots on. Hey now, John. That old song, I still remember it. Remember it from my breaker boy days. I worked for the Pennsylvania Coal Company in Pittston. That town was the whole of the coal crew world. I must have believed that that world began at the colliery and ended at the cemetery. I'd overheard from the miners boasting about the day they spent in Philadelphia years ago. Oh, you should see it, they'd say. Yes, you should see it, boyo. You never seen a thing as splendid as Independence Hall. Hey now, John, time to be getting your work boots on. Only 8 years old when I was a breaker boy. But then there were 8 of us, 10 mouths to feed on a single miner's salary. My father was a strong man, Mother, but no back is that strong. Time to be getting your work boots on. I thought they made up that old song just for me. I'm proud of it, I was sure. I remember the cold in the air, watching the sunrise as I walked to the mine with my doll and the neighbors. All of us singing that old song. Then we died in those mines. Whenever a man was injured, the coal and iron police would carry him home. They'd say, "Oh, that's a bad break, Patty. But you can't spend the whole of your life taking good coal from the mine and not expect the mine to take something in return." Those mines took so much more from us than we ever took from them. Time to be getting your work boots on. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. You know, Mother, when you think of it, prayers and songs are more alike than not, aren't they? There will we go when we're all alone in the dark. In our fear and in our hurt, they both bring us comfort. For a moment at least, prayers and songs lift us out of our dirty work boots and help us forget our hunger. I am sorry, Mother. I'm a bit out of sorts tonight and very tired. You see, I gave the last rites to a 7-year-old girl this evening. I gave the last rites to a 7-year-old girl. There. I said it out loud. Did you hear me, Mother? The last rites? No. No, it can't be. I gave first communion to a 7-year-old girl. Yes. Yes, that sounds so much better. First Holy Communion, God bless her. The last rites? No, that's for the old, the sick, the dead. Not for little girls. I explained the mystery of the Holy Trinity to a 7-year-old girl. That's what I did. St. Patrick. The Irish left Ireland because they were hungry. They could have stayed. They could have starved in Ireland just as well. At least in Ireland, they could have died for free, not all in the company store. She didn't even look much like a girl, Mother. Not pink, plump, and rosy-cheeked, all hair and freckles. This one, she looked like death. She looked like a dead thing. Like an animal you'd find in the woods after a spring thaw. Her skin just hanging off her bones. Her mother. Her poor young mother. Absolutely beside herself. Nearly mad, wringing her hands and wailing. Desperate to apologize to anyone who'd listen for the way her girl looked. For the way she looked. For the state of the sorry rags they had to bury her in. Her husband, building a tiny coffin out of what I think must have been a dynamite crate. Her husband, he couldn't work. He was missing a leg. You can't very well be expected to load coal when you're missing a leg. The girl's 9-year-old brother, he couldn't be at the funeral at all. He was off working in the mines. A scab with a strike on. He'd been a breaker boy before, sure. But when the father lost his leg, you see, the Pennsylvania Coal Company lost a miner. That's right, Mother. We can't ignore the mine operator's loss, now can we? All that man lost was a leg, God bless him. The mine owners lost a whole miner, so the family owes the company a miner, don't they, Mother? Can you believe the way these people think? Were they born without human hearts? A boy cannot be expected to support an entire family. It's madness. It's absolutely inhuman. It's greed that killed that poor girl. It was greed that killed that child, sure as anything. Mother, what do you say to a family that is suffering the way that this family suffers? Besides, I will pray for you. What does one say? I said, have faith. sometimes it can be very difficult to look into the red eyes of people who've lost so profoundly. Sometimes saying have faith can be an extremely difficult thing to do. People say things like, their suffering is over. Yes, now that is a fine thing to say. To say to a man who's just come from shooting a sick dog. People say it's God's will. But is it? People will say she's in a better place now. For a 7-year-old girl, is there really a better place than the end of her mother's apron strings? I know a man who owns a bakery. If I ask, he'll find a place for the boy. The family's suffered enough. I can do something for him. He doesn't need to be a scab. The strike. The strike. Forgive me, Mother, but the strike was on my mind as I spoke to that girl's family. I might have told them to support the United Mine Workers Union, to believe in John Mitchell, to know that we are fighting for a 20% wage increase, an 8-hour workday, and a regular system of weighing. Fighting Union President John Mitchell? Well, here's fighting John Curran, fighting Union Priest. I know that John Mitchell has spoken with the famous attorney, Clarence Darrow. I have been in correspondence with President Theodore Roosevelt. He's watching us closely. But when I looked into that woman's eyes, when I told her to have faith, my mind was screaming to strike. I can't imagine any woman finding comfort in those words. Not even you, Mother. Knowing who and what your son was. Not just believing, but knowing. Knowing the way you know the sun is warm and the sky is blue. You knew that the innocent 33-year-old flesh and blood man they took from you was God's only begotten Son, our Savior and Redeemer. You knew that his death upon the cross would free us all from original sin, and that in 3 days' time he would rise from the grave in triumph and ascend to heaven to be seated at the right hand of the Father. You knew all of it. And still, that day you stood before the cross had to be the longest and hardest day of your blessed life. Mother, all I really mean to say is I would have liked to have said more to that family. Something more than have faith. I would have loved to have said something about justice. But justice can be a slippery thing. especially with the sort of men we must deal with. Men like George Bear, John Markle, and the rest of the mine owners. All of them millionaires and captains of industry. For men like these, justice is a thing that can be bought. Bought just as easily as another man buys a loaf of bread. I pray for these men, Mother. You know that I do. I pray not only for their immortal souls, but I pray that these men find the wisdom to realize that the fair treatment of those who do the real work of their industry makes solid and sound business sense. But I have a copy of a letter for Mr. Bear. It bears reading. My dear sir, I have your letter of the 16th institution. I do not know who you are. I see you are a religious man, but you are evidently biased in favor of the working man to control business to which he has no other interest than to secure fair wages for the work he does. I beg you not to be discouraged. The rights and interests of the labor man will be protected and cared for, not by the labor agitators, but by the Christian men to whom God, in his infinite wisdom, has given control of the property interests of the country, and upon the successful management of which so much depends. Do not be discouraged. Pray earnestly that the right men triumph. Always remembering that the Lord omnipotent still reigns, and that his reign is one of law and order, and not violence and crime. Very truly yours, George F. Bear, President. Mr. Bear certainly seems to believe God is on his side, doesn't he, Mother? Well, I don't know what church he goes to, but as they say in the coal fields, to hell with that! Forgive me, Mother. Mea culpa, mea culpa. That letter proves that the gap between the common people and the coal barons is a great one. There are worlds between us. Mother, as soon as that letter was published, it provoked vehement editorials, cartoons, and more. My own niece, Catherine Klein, penned this poem that appeared in the Baltimore American. We ought to be glad and joyous. We ought to be filled with glee that eons ago the placard was nailed to the ancient tree, that millions and millions of ages, back further than Adam and Eve, the ichthyosaurus halted and speedily took his leave. And so it was all saved for us, the spot with the sign, beware! This planet is run by earth and sun, and is making coal for bear. Clever girl. As for my response to Mr. Bear, well, the earth is the Lord's. He created it for man's use and benefit. Now, if a handful of American millionaires assume divine rights to the Lord's earth, where do the rest of us come in? Bear is heard to say, these immigrant children don't suffer. And even if they did, how would we know? They don't even speak English. I saw a child of immigrants tonight, Mr. Bear. I can't be certain, but I feel safe enough in saying that at one time she spoke English. And tonight, she uttered not a sound in any language. Still, Mr. Bear, I believe even you would have known she suffered. Immigrant children, captains of industry, a handful of American millionaires. Give me you're tired, you're hungry, you're poor. I do recall the Union Army had some use for Irish immigrants. Sure. Weren't they waiting for us at Ellis Island? They grabbed every man they could at the docks. From one ship, straight into another. Don't worry, boys. We'll feed you on the boat. We were part of an army that fought so that other men could be free. How soon they forget. In the coal fields, all we are immigrants prone to drink and violence. Mother, I am for complete abstinence, you know, but sure, I understand how a cold pint can wash the coal dust from a man's throat, and that a taste of whiskey can sometimes ease the pain of a life that can seem so bleak. But it never cures it. As for being prone to violence, well, 2 weeks ago, I went to the prison to visit a boy from this parish. You see, with the strike on, he had been picking coal from a Catlin dump to bring home to his mother. Sure, he was in his cups when the coal and iron police found him. He said, I don't remember what started the fight, but I'm sure fighting words were said, Father. You know, I said, had the good Lord been there at your side, he would have told you to turn the other cheek. I know, Father, and I tried, but they busted that side of my face too, see? I know it's not funny, Mother. It was the way the lads said it, and if you don't laugh, then you cry. That's true enough. Didn't your son say that whatever you do to the least of my brothers, that you do unto me? It's for the least of them I would have loved to have heard the confessions of the coal and iron police. Would you look at that? It's snowing. When did that start? It is late October. Oh, look at those great white flakes. Pure as God's own fingers. Reminds me of Canada, Mother. God's country. All of it unspoiled. The air so crisp and clean, it tingles in your lungs. No collieries, no column dumps, no coal dust to turn the sun grey. Why ask me? Why ask a simple priest to arbitrate such a great strike, Mother? Especially when the mine owners refuse to engage in collective bargaining with the union. The strike began in May, now Christmas is on the way. Bless me. The first snow of the year, and I'm already thinking of Christmas. Never snowed in Bethlehem, did it, Mother? No. The strike. This time, we all stand as one. The Irish, the Poles and Slovaks, all children of God, all people of the coal fields. Where's the ghost of Jacob Marley to convince the mine owners that mankind should be their business? He's in a book by Charles Dickens. That's where he is. God bless us, everyone.
Very powerful. Thank you. That was wonderful. In a moment, I'm going to ask our Assistant Director, Sarah Piccini, to join us up here. Actually, you can come up now. But first, I'd like to introduce the two men that brought KK's words to life today. Our director is Art Walsh. Just a quick bio. Art was born in Brooklyn, New York, and was a self-employed kitchen designer before retiring in 2006. He became involved in community theater in 1969, acting in theaters in Ohio, New York, and Pennsylvania. He's been directing since 1996, which is also the year he began writing his own plays, including A Little Murder on the Side and To Catch a Cheat, both of which were produced in Scranton. All totaled, you directed more than 40 productions, with at least 18 of them locally.
Yes.
Scott Rave, Scott, you want to come up? AKA Father Curran. Scott is a resident of Plains Township and was thrilled to have the opportunity to bring this historic figure of Father Curran to life. He enjoys acting, and we enjoy watching you act, and has had the fortune of participating in theater productions throughout northeastern Pennsylvania. Some of his most recent roles include Mr. Wormwood in Matilda at the Pennsylvania Theater of Performing Arts, Porter in Death Trap at the Providence Playhouse, and Gypsy Scotty in Mona Lisa and the Cross at the Old Brook Theater, which was written by K.K. Gordon. So once again, our director, our actor, and our playwright, one more time for each of them. Thank you, for your excellent work, and KK for writing the play. It's now my pleasure to introduce Sarah Piccini. the Assistant Director of the Lackawanna Historical Society, and who I like to call her house historian. She graduated from the University of Scranton with an undergrad in History and Communications, and then received a master's degree in History in 2010, focusing on the ethnic and labor history of the Lackawanna Valley, particularly the 1877 strike. In 2011, she wrote Framing Faith, the Pictorial History of Communities of Faith, to document 10 Catholic churches that were closing within the Diocese of Scranton that year. She's been with the Historical Society since 2013 and is also a member of the Council of Pennsylvania Historical Association, where she serves as that organization's business secretary. In addition to her thesis research on early coal strikes, she has most recently researched and prepared an exhibit and public program on the 1918 Spanish flu in Scranton, very appropriate considering our current situation. She developed a program and an exhibit on local women's suffrage and politics to mark the 2020 centennial anniversary of the passage of the 19th Amendment. And just this past September, prepared an exhibit on the Women's Institute of Domestic Arts and Sciences, which was highlighted in the cover story of our newsletter and is on display here today in the Center Hall. Be sure those of you that are in the building check it out. I feel very confident that Sarah can now offer some closing remarks and for the least of them, and then also give us some perspective on Father Curran and his place in our local history. Sarah.
Thank you. Some of this you may have covered a little bit before using Erica Funke's words, and then what you have gathered from watching Scott portray Father Curran so excellently. But before John Curran was a priest and a labor advocate, he was a mine worker and a young striker. Growing up in Avoca, he went to work for the Pennsylvania Coal Company at age 8 and became swept up at age 10 in his very first strike in Pittston. The experience shaped his later activism. Curran worked in the mines for 8 more years, moving from breaker boy to a mule driver, while pursuing a high school night course. When he was 18, he left the mines to attend Wyoming Seminary and later studied at the Benedictine Fathers at St. Vincent College in Latrobe and with the Sulpician Fathers at Grand Seminary in Montreal. He was ordained by Bishop O'Hara in Scranton in 1887 and was first posted to St. Rose of Lima Church in Carbondale, where he stayed for 8 years, before being delegated to establish a new parish, Holy Savior, in Wilkes-Barre, in the East End. He remained at Holy Savior until 1919, when he became pastor at St. Mary's in Wilkes-Barre. Curran was active in establishing and improving his parish community and took a prominent role in the temperance movement as well, which we'll forgive him for. But it was continued involvement in miners' strikes that gave him his nickname as the labor priest. You heard Scott portraying Father Curran asking miners to have faith. He was asking them to have faith in more than just God and in religion. He was asking them to have faith in the union movement itself. Unions at the time were still a new idea in coal country. The most successful union before that had been the Workingmen's Benevolent Association that led strikes in the 1870s. That union was broken by Franklin Gowan and the Reading Railroad when they were able to tie union activity to the vigilante actions of the Mullen Wires. That was the end of the Workingmen's Benevolent Association. Unions were kind of a tough sell to get miners interested, to get them started. You had to bring men together who were working different jobs, even if they were working in the same colliery. They came from different ethnic backgrounds. They didn't even speak the same language. It was hard to find common ground to get them started. When John Mitchell founded the United Mine Workers, he found in Father Curran a solution to make that union much stronger. All these men believed in the same God. The Catholic Church formed the center of many varied immigrant communities. They were painstakingly erected using the hard-won nickels of coal miners. They were the center of the different communities with an ethnic priest who spoke their language. While the church was a recruiting station, Mitchell used his own conservative persona. Even his practice of turning his collar up made him look like a Catholic priest himself. Using his own persona and the respected position of Father Curran, he was able to draw men into the United Mine Workers Union. The timing was right in the church itself. The Catholic Church globally was entering a time of increased social awareness. In the 1870s, Bishop O'Hara, who had ordained Father Curran, considered the Knights of Labor Union members, quote, scurrilous renegades, and worked to prevent their organization. But by 1891, Pope Leo XIII's encyclical, Rerum Novarum, addressed the dehumanizing conditions of laborers and affirmed workers' rights to fair wages, to form unions, and to strike. Whether Curran ever read Rerum Novarum is doubtful, but he embraced its message wholeheartedly. During the United Mine Workers' first strike in 1900, Curran advocated for arbitration, validating the miners' grievances, but hoping for a peaceful resolution. It's a position he would repeat time and time again, working to connect miners and mine owners to find solutions. In 1902, Curran found himself playing the same role when 150,000 men sat idle. He opposed the strike before it began in May. He called it, quote, veritable suicide, but agreed that it should be fought to the bitter end. Curran exhorted Mitchell to negotiate and traveled to Philadelphia himself in July to meet with George Bear, and later went to New York to meet with other railroad presidents and representatives of J.P. Morgan to find an end to the strike. He urged his own parishioners to stand united, while encouraging young men in his congregation to seek employment elsewhere and send money back to support their families in the coal region. When Curran received a copy of Bear's arrogant August letter, it's widely believed that he is the one who released the letter to the press and caused such deserved outrage. Curran was one of many who appealed to President Theodore Roosevelt to step in to end the strike. Curran and Roosevelt became close friends, with Curran providing man-on-the-ground observations for Roosevelt. In his autobiography, Roosevelt wrote, quote, Wilkes-Barre was the center of the strike, and the man in Wilkes-Barre who helped me the most was Father Curran. I grew to know and trust and believe in him. When the strike finally ended in October of 1902, Curran testified before the Anthracite Coal Strike Commission and worked to have a religious leader included in the commission itself. The 1902 coal strike was successful in gaining a 10% wage increase, a 9-hour day, and a board of arbitration for the miners. But the fight wasn't over yet, and Curran didn't back down either. He was active in seeking solutions for strikes in 1912 and 1916, and in 1920, 22, 23, and 25. There were a lot to keep him busy in the coal fields. Father Curran outlived both his friends and his enemies. Theodore Roosevelt died in 1919, and Edith Roosevelt personally invited Curran to attend the funeral at Oyster Bay. 8 months later, when John Mitchell died in September, Father Curran said the final blessing over Mitchell's coffin on the steps of St. Peter's Cathedral before a crowd of thousands of miners standing in the street. Perhaps more satisfying to him, Curran saw the demise of both George Bear and the Coal and Iron Police. George Bear died in April 1914. Although he continued his position of power with the Reading Railroad and was greatly admired as a benefactor to Franklin and Marshall College, his arrogant words stuck with him forever from his moment of infamy. And in his obituary, the Wall Street Journal refers to him as Divine Providence Bear. The Coal and Iron Police diminished after the 1902 strike with the formation of the Pennsylvania State Police in 1905. And in 1931, Governor Gifford Pinchot finally ended the system of industrial police when he refused to issue new or renew private police commissions. Curran himself died on November 7, 1936, in the midst of another anthracite upheaval. On Good Friday, a series of bombs exploded in Wilkes-Barre, a struggle between the United Mine Workers and a new union, the United Anthracite Miners of Pennsylvania. A suspicious fire damaged Curran's church, St. Mary's, the next day. Curran was uninjured, but never really recovered from the shock. And a full-page spread on the day of his death, the Wilkes-Barre Evening News noted, Curran was a friend to all. He served in the vineyards of his master, faithfully, honorably, and with the fullest humble devotion. In the hour of his passing, a sorrowing valley knew that his benedictions, his deeds, and his virtues bow in supplication and in sorrow.
Thank you very much. We are going to end the live stream now and hope that everyone who watched enjoyed it and learned a little bit about Father Curran, and will stay tuned for a future full production. And we hope that you will also tune in to the other programs that were offered this last month. Many of them are available on Zoom through the institutions that sponsor them. So if anyone's interested, they can always reach out to the Lackawanna Historical Society, and we can send you that schedule as well. Thank you, and good afternoon. For those of you still in the house with us, please join us for some